You are either a glutton for punishment, or you're super serious about really strengthening the skills we've been talking about so that you will have a much easier time successfully completing all of the work we do in this course. And I'm, of course, going to choose to believe it's the latter, not the former, that is motivating you to spend all this time with me, and I love it. All right, so let's do one more practice evaluation. Here's your argument. Some swimsuits are not garments intended for the water. Consequently, some garments intended for the water are not swimsuits. And you've got your 6 steps to success here, right? You're going to practice making sure that you work through each of these steps in order. Don't skip any steps where you're trying to develop the habit of always approaching these arguments very methodically. And that's going to be so useful to you to have as a habit as the arguments we evaluate start getting much more complex. All right, so why don't you go ahead and pause your video, follow these 6 steps, and then when you're done, go ahead and restart your video and we'll check your work. All right. We lucked out again by having an indicator word given to us in the argument. Consequently, that's a conclusion indicator word telling us that the sentence that follows it is the conclusion and the sentence that precedes it is the premise. Our premise and conclusion statements are already expressed as standard forms, categorical statements, so we kind of lucked out again. But we'll set the argument up in standard form by putting the premise statement on top of the conclusion separated by that inference bar. And now we're going to go ahead and symbolize that argument. This is such an important step in our process. And again, we lucked out 3 luckouts in this particular argument because we have only 2 terms. We don't have to worry about which terms to choose. We've got just S and G, swimsuits and garments. So then when we symbolize the argument, we'll end up with something like this. Some S are not G, therefore some G are not S. All right, now what we have to do, find the differences. What is different between the premise and the conclusion statement? I see only one thing. The subject and predicate terms have switched positions in the conclusion. That's the only difference between the premise and the conclusion statement. And there's only one operation that does that one thing, right? Contraposition switches the positions of the subject and predicate, but it then replaces both of them with their term complements. But we don't have that going on here. Just the subject and predicate are switched. Nothing else is going on. That tells us conversion is at work here. Okay? Conversion is at work. Now the question is this. Has conversion been done correctly? Yes. And the final question, is the premise statement, the type of statement, conversion can be applied to produce a new statement with a known truth value? And the answer to that is no. We can convert E statements and I statements to produce new statements that will have the same truth value as the original statements. But we can't do that with A and O statements. When we apply conversion to a statement like the premise, we generate a statement like the conclusion. But even when we assume the premise statement is true, the conclusion statement will remain undetermined. That means it could be true, it could be false. And remember, if it's possible for the conclusion to be false, even when we assume the premises are true, the argument is invalid. So this is invalid by illicit conversion.